So next slide, maybe Martina, you can help me click to the next slide. So maybe let me share a little bit more about Martina. So Martina is the head of programs and partnership of Shared Value Initiative Hong Kong. So maybe I'll pass the time to Martina to introduce herself and as well as take over the floor to share some of her thinking and experience, and hoping that can inspire some of you guys to think about how can you actually apply different tools and techniques such as design thinking to shape your venture. And there will also be some case studies on some of the creating shared values examples serving as an inspiration for youth. So I'll pass on the time to Martina.
Thanks, Janice. Thanks very much for having me at Hack Asia. Hi, everyone. Let's see if I can have a seat here. Yeah. So, design thinking for shared value. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great that we can have people from overseas as well now that we can be online. So, a little bit about what I'm going to go through for the next half hour. I understand you've just heard from Microsoft and Google and different case studies and examples on how to apply tech for business innovation. Now, I'm going to switch it up a little bit and actually talk about social innovation. Now, if you're not familiar with that phrase, I'll explain a little as well. So firstly, why now? And then what is Agenda 2030? How does this relate to sustainable development in general? And then creating shared value, the focus of my talk, as well as human-centered design, how you can apply that to your ideas, and a couple practical tips. So hi, change makers. You're all change makers. This is normally where I would tell you a little bit about myself, but in fact, it's also about you. So in my experience as a social innovation sort of promoter and designer, it's really powerful to bring together people like you, youth and startups and entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs, business folks, non-business folks, together to come up with solutions for the environment and for the community, right? And for myself, this is what I thrive on. The picture you see here is Creative Collision, which is where we also convene at Shared Value Initiative Hong Kong. All of these folks together, because really that's how you come up with better ideas, break out of silos, and so on. So this is really the power that you bring to the table today. For myself, what am I? I'm a connector of people and ideas. I'm a service designer. I am an experience designer and a partnership builder between sectors. So the question from me to you is, what are your strengths and what are you going to bring to the table to help these challenges come up with scalable solutions, right? Just a little bit more. So Shared Value Initiative Hong Kong is part of a global network. We were founded about 3.5, 4 years ago in Hong Kong. The idea of creating shared value actually came from Harvard. So 10 years ago, Michael Porter, who is well known for Porter's 5 forces, competitive forces, came out with creating shared value as a concept, which was in partnership with Mark Kramer from Harvard. Now, the idea is that we can change business and actually use it to tackle social and environmental issues in a profitable and scalable way. And we set up a network, so we're part of a sort of sister organization network between the US Shared Value Initiative, Shared Value Project in Australia, Africa, India, and Hong Kong, covering the region. So it's been 10 years. Creating shared value is now a movement all around the world, and my role every day is to help businesses in the region learn about this, practice this, and a lot of you might be interested in starting to apply more CSV strategies going forward. Just a couple examples of the kind of companies that we work with in Hong Kong. So everything from consumer goods with Nestle to professional services and banks and environmental management, interior design or property and so on. So the whole range, and any challenge that you're working on, creating shared value will be a tool that you can apply for that. So why now? Whatever you think of Greta, she's right in that we need to act now. Really, it's not a time to sit on our laurels because we've just come off of COP26, and regardless of what you may think of the outcome of COP26, I think we can all agree that every day that we don't take action to improve the state of our community and the world is a day that we are falling behind because of inertia, because of all the natural ways that our systems have set up for the economy and society to diverge in many ways. So Greta wants you to panic
and I want you to act. During COVID, especially, we can see that business cannot succeed in a failing society, right? So all of these things, the Sustainable Development Goals, are actually interlinked. And if you look at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals here, the biosphere level, the society level, the economy level, regardless of what issue you care about, whether it's no poverty or quality education, or you're tackling something with waste management, with oceans, with energy, all of these have actually some material significance to different businesses, which are risks that are going to become expensive, and they are opportunities that other people will take advantage of if you don't. And many of your startups are actually riding on those opportunities, and the opportunity is to scale up the solution so that we can solve some of these issues more quickly and at scale. And number 17 is where I would put myself in terms of partnerships and what is really key to work together. And we're in a perfect storm. Somehow we've created for ourselves this absolutely critical tipping point where urbanization means that we're adding 200,000 people a day to cities all around the world. The population in 8 years will increase to 8 billion. Climate change will leave us with X number of degrees in terms of sea level temperature rise. And just in 8 years, every year that goes by with COVID is another year less we have. We will need 40% more energy to sustain what we're after now. 50% more water. Where will we get that from? Clean water. And 40% more food for those of us lucky enough to have access to meals during the day or not. And the challenge to business, and the reason the Sustainable Development Goals is now really a wake-up call, is that governments cannot do it alone, civil society cannot do it alone, and we have to work together in order to be able to achieve these in just 96 months. We have 96 months left until our agenda is up. About 2 years ago, the Business Roundtable, 186 CEOs of the world's biggest companies, said that the purpose of business is no longer to serve shareholders alone. It is to serve all stakeholders. Now that's a tall order. So this is Amazon and Johnson & Johnson and BlackRock and JP Morgan talking about how they're going to fundamentally commit to serve all stakeholders. And Larry Fink, BlackRock, influential letter every year, purpose is the engine to long-term profitability. But how do you achieve that, right? It all sounds great, but there's a lot of criticism about this as well. And Fortune lists every year 50 companies that change the world through their core business. So stakeholder capitalism is the new way forward. But I think the key here is not that we're talking about satisfying everybody, employees, customers, suppliers, and so on. The key is that they have come out as the business sector to say that we will be accountable to more than just our shareholders. So it's up to us to actually hold them accountable and challenge them on that as well. Now, creating shared value then. This is about design thinking. It's also about a new way to practice business, right? So CSV, what is creating shared value? It's an approach, a business strategy to create new economic value for your business, meaning revenue generating or cost saving directly, at the same time that you have measurable benefits to society. So you need to first isolate a social issue. I'm going to go into that a little bit later. Or an environmental need that you're working on with your prompt. And social problems, unmet needs, are actually business opportunities if you can look at the intersection of where your core assets and expertise are. What you want to do is make sure your design is profitable, and that's the only way that it can be scalable over time and measurably impactful on a specific need in the environment or community. This is the way that we can grow the pie, make it bigger. Shared value is not about having the same ethical values. So there's a lot of confusion normally. It's not about values, plural, but economic value and societal value. What is the benefit to society and your business? It's not about having the same values of integrity or honesty and so on. These are important, but that's not what is going to grow the pie together. It's different from CSR in that it's not about making your money and then giving it back, right? So a lot of your solutions are gonna hopefully find ways to generate more revenue or more cost saving or some measurable way to manage the people better or your workers better. So it's not about giving back. Philanthropy and CSR is good, but this is not the only way to have scalable social impacts. It's also not about compliance or reputation building. If your business idea, the only benefit is to improve your reputation, is that a business idea? I would challenge that. I come from public relations. To elaborate a little bit, social impact portfolio. All of you are familiar with, hopefully, corporate social responsibility, volunteering, fundraising, philanthropy. These are all very necessary still, especially in urgent situations or humanitarian situations. Sometimes you need the funds and the manpower and the equipment, but that is not shared value. To move it to shared value, you would have to figure out how can my CSR program be linked to my core business so that it is self-sustaining as well and more relevant to our expertise. Now, social enterprise, you might think, oh, this sounds like a social enterprise approach. True in a way, but what's missing often is that social enterprises are difficult to scale up. Not impossible, but this is the key difference where in Hong Kong, I work with many social enterprises as well, and often it's that combination with the corporate and social enterprise that's going to make it powerfully able to replicate beyond a neighborhood, for instance. Business as usual, you know that many times you're designing for the bottom line or for your shareholders or for sales or for whatever targets you have. How do you build in the impact so that your growth is not diverging from the planetary boundaries and exploiting people along the value chain as well? So these four are different approaches that will complement each other, and that over time, we basically hope that you can practice more shared value where you create business value as well as societal value. And that's how you would align profit and purpose. So to tell you a little bit more as you're brainstorming for your challenges, these are 3 ways that are the Harvard Business Review article that you can find on our website originally talks about, right? First way to create shared value, you redesign your product or your market. And I'll give a couple examples of that as well. You think about maybe the poorest customers. Do they have access to healthcare? Do they have access to consumer goods? How could you create access when there's no infrastructure? So that is where the design thinking comes in. Redefining productivity in value chains. That covers supply chains as well as people. We've done initiatives in mental well-being in Hong Kong where you have to show the business case for investing in your people. What does that mean in terms of improving productivity, reducing absenteeism, presenteeism, and so on, right? And then the third layer, which is a little bit more complex, is enabling local cluster development. Clusters basically means local communities or neighborhoods where maybe you are working with the factories and the school that those workers send their kids to, and whatever other organizations in that neighborhood or on a regional level. And I'll give examples as well. First one on products. Now, these examples may not seem directly related to your challenge statements, but there are parallels, actually. Some of you will be customers of AIA Vitality. So you may know that Vitality is a program that rewards you for living healthier. So if you go to the gym, if you eat healthy, if you do different things, you'll get rewards. But there's actually a business case to this, because the problem is that most health problems and therefore insurance claims come from 4 unhealthy habits, meaning unhealthy diet, smoking, excessive drinking, lack of exercise. And that actually is the biggest cost for an insurer, right? So how do they change and redesign the relationship with the customer? They basically looked at, okay, if those are the highest risks to my bottom line, where I will lose money, then we can actually replicate. This was from South Africa, in fact, and that's why it's scalable, where Vitality and AIA worked together to design a program that would reward customers for being more healthy. And this is all linked to research and data. Because over time, if you can encourage your customers to be more healthy, and change their behavior, actually, that will reduce the claims for the insurer. And it's proven just in Australia that that leads to about 8% lower claims to the insurer and fewer hospital admissions. The people who go to the doctor will go because they want preventative health care. So that fundamentally is a redesign of how you interact with your customers as well, right? So one way that you can rethink how an insurance product goes from paying when you need it when you're sick to actually incentivizing you to be less sick, and then you get a discount on your premium, perhaps. Next example might be more relevant to some of these cases. NIO, you may have heard of or even worked with in China. So NIO is an electric vehicle manufacturer. What's unique about them, and the reason they made it onto the Fortune Change the World list last year, is that they came up with battery as a service. So for some of these energy solutions, how could you actually take what normally would be one car, you buy a car including electric battery. Problem in China was there wasn't enough charging infrastructure around. So even for Hong Kong or elsewhere, how could we borrow this kind of principle to say, you can buy the car without the electric battery. When you need batteries, you can swap in 3 minutes or 5 minutes, which is faster than charging for 75 minutes, even if you can find a station. Not only that, they created other apps and tools, all these different ecosystem of services from what was originally a very physical product. Where they're making money is through these services. It's actually more efficient, it's more affordable, and it is cheaper, in fact, than filling up your gas-powered vehicle. So over time, that is their competitive advantage, which is the coming from the innovation that they designed around enabling the customer to borrow instead of buy, in a way, right, by use. And you can apply this to many other cases as well. You can think about clothing or other things like that in their circular economy. And the business benefit is that they've captured more market share. It means that you and I are more able to buy electric vehicles now that we don't have to pay 10,000 US dollars extra for that battery. Next one, for Cocoa Plan. So Nestle was one of the poster children of creating shared value. They have a huge supply chain. Where does your chocolate come from? Do you know? And it's actually getting more difficult to grow chocolate in certain parts of the world. Farmers are aging. There's climate change factors on the environment and so on. So there's increasing demand but limited supply and a lack of continuity in this value chain. A lot of times these workers, there's not a lot of transparency around how much they're paid or what these fair trade practices are. So Nestle is basically extending beyond their normal scope to work with farmers directly to improve agricultural practices so that it is more sustainable and the yields are better. Better farming, better lives, better cocoa. It's something that's been done for decades, but being very intentional about this and involving the farmers all through to the middlemen in between is significantly intentional and needs to be tracked in order to actually look at the overall impact. And this is a program that's been running all around the world now. Same thing applies to Nestle's coffee in Southeast Asia, or to their milk products in China, where there were no dairy products before, no dairy farms, rather. So product examples. Now moving to supply chain or value chain. I know that some of the prompts here have to do with automotive sustainability or energy efficiency and so on. So Walmart is known for Project Gigaton, reducing their emissions by 1 gigaton over X number of years. But did you know that also, besides selling product, a big pain point for them is their distribution network and the trucking emissions that come about from all of these goods. In the last few years, they've suffered as a business from lower margin because there's increasing volatility in trade markets and costs overseas and unstable macro factors. So what do we do to keep us profitable, especially during COVID? So these trucks now, how do we look at this as a significant source of our emissions? I think this is applicable to some of the cases here. So they committed to, on the product side, sourcing products locally. Now that's going to have an impact on emissions. Committed to US-made products by 2023. That's next year, actually. We can check on the progress there. And as far as the tractor trailers, basically looking at new fuel-efficient designs and tires, looking at every single aspect, minimizing the idling time. How do you manage this fleet of trucks? There's a lot of wasted time and just emissions that come about from an inefficient system. And adopting electrification and weight reduction, new technologies that maybe you're considering as well for your prompts. In the process, it's also a social benefit because there are a lot of these workers who are driving trucks overnight and so on, where there's different things that you can do to make those jobs more sustainable and more healthy as well, and take better care of your workers. Ultimately, this program reduced $1 billion in cost saving for Walmart. It is more transparent. They're tracking with technology. You can have a search on all their different programs. Lastly, for cluster development, looking at youth challenges. All around the world, we have problems with youth being out of work, youth who are disengaged. So at the same time, you hear in Hong Kong too, and elsewhere, we have trouble finding talent, qualified talent for our jobs. So a couple years ago, 5 companies, the ones we show here, seemingly nothing to do with each other, McDonald's, Caterpillar, Microsoft, in fact, Walmart, I just mentioned. How do we find qualified talent? So 20% of youth are neither at work or at school. We also have trouble training these people as a standalone. So they built a program together, actually, with the International Youth Federation to train people under the new employment opportunities. And by creating a platform that's cross-industry, actually they were able to make it more cost-effective to train a large number of youth, more than 300,000 last time we checked. 4,000 employers now, imagine. So it's actually much more efficient to be able to train at scale for similar issues, maybe frontline roles or technical roles even that have commonalities, and life skills, right, at the bottom there, critical thinking, sales, relationships, communication, teamwork. And all of this led to solving a very real business pain point in a way that doesn't necessarily involve a lot of technology, but is effective over time at solving a social issue as well. So we have a lot more case studies, but for the purpose of today, that gives you a sense of how difficult it is to change. All this sounds great, right? You have many brilliant ideas, but it is very slow for companies and organizations and systems to change. Why? Because you have a restraint on short-term reporting and short-term vision, especially during COVID. How can I make sure my business survives the next year or a half? There's no roadmap on societal impact and what lasting impact does your business want to have, right? In addition to your business strategy. And we lack cross-sector collaboration. You hear this a lot. It's a big ship. We're all on this ship together until wherever we go. If we want to move this ship by 2030, how is policy going to set that direction? How is finance going to be the fuel and commerce and business be the engine? But we all have to start to push the levers to change these together. And Jardines is a good example of a big ship as well, which will take some time to turn with your help. Moving more specifically to a couple design tips. So in our work with companies, we try to use human-centered design. Some of you will be familiar with this, where you look at the problem and talk to the stakeholders and users and look at what could be. Make sure that you're imagining really lots of possibilities, open wide, right? This is the double diamond. Come up with so many more ideas that you think maybe are a little bit wild. and then narrow it down to what is profitable, what is viable in a timeline, what is measurably impactful. And then later, you're going to need to test these out, hopefully. So another way to look at it, tip number 1, is really focus hard on the user. I think a lot of times people get caught up in the business pain point or the revenue opportunity, or even on coming up with a flashy new tech solution, but really focus on who is the core user here, or several stakeholders, and how are we going to ask about their needs and then address what they haven't been able to solve on their own. So step 1 in this iterative loop is to identify the social issues or environmental issues in your prompt. Second is to make the business case for how is your solution going to help the company make more money or save money or solve some talent issue which is measurable as well as far as the result. Those are the first 2 for your strategy and your idea. At the same time, you need to think about how are you going to track that progress? How do you know that you've made the change that you set out to do? What metrics are you going to have? I'm sort of skipping ahead here, but number 4 is, of course, building in your solution. How are you going to measure the business value and the societal benefit or the environmental benefit over time to prove that what you've proposed is actually working? Otherwise, you're going to have to improve it, of course. Second tip, stakeholder mapping. We talked about stakeholder capitalism, right? So I think a lot of people know that they have many stakeholders to deal with. We designed a whole card game around putting people in the hot seat for a stakeholder simulation. How would an NGO respond to your idea? How would a journalist, a regulator, an employee, have they even heard about it? Try to map out in a chart your different stakeholders so that you look at then who are most important for your idea. Who have you overlooked? Who do you need to work with to plan for your idea ahead of time rather than them reacting to it later, right? So businesses are really good at coming up with something on their own, and this is where the co-creation and innovation and crowdsourcing actually is great for getting people out of their box. Where you as students and startups can challenge the business thinking is to say, as a consumer or as an employee, here's what I would ask about. So for any idea that you have, it's really important to think about how would your most important stakeholder groups respond to your idea, and how can you involve them in your planning process, in your design process, and then invite their feedback later on as well. Number 3, this is a worksheet that any of you could come up with. But the thing that I've noticed is that a lot of times people jump to a solution. In design thinking, you already have, as far as I know, you've proposed an idea. But what's hard is making sure that you have a very clear environmental or social or both needs that are isolated. What exactly are you going to improve with your idea? How do you know that you've made a change there? What technology or data collection will you need to put in place? Separately, you should look at the most important business pain points and opportunities. Actually, I would recommend to look at those separately because then you don't jump to a conclusion too soon. Try to actually isolate the social and environmental needs, such as you see on the worksheet here, and then the business pain points and opportunities. The dots then you can connect in the middle because maybe there are links between a talent retention problem and non-degree holders not able to get jobs that you can connect that you didn't expect before. So theory of change I've gone over as far as the inputs, outputs, outcomes, and impact, right? Try to use that. You can have a search on theory of change. Try to use that for your business idea because that's how it can be compelling for we're here now and this is how you can expect to be with our collaboration or with our idea. And then keep iterating with that feedback. So that's just a couple tips from me. If you want to learn more about our experience or more case studies, you can find them on our website as well. And good luck with your pitches. You are all potentially social innovators. The key is just to look at these things together. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. It was such a great speech. We want to just say thank you in a small way with a little gift from us to you for joining us here
Thank you
today.
so much.
Thanks so much. Wonderful. Great thoughts.
you.
Back
Thank
to Janice.
Okay, great. So here comes to the end, not really the end for Hack Asia for today. So I'll actually now tell you guys a little bit about like what to expect actually coming up next for you guys. So as mentioned, for all of you, this is just the beginning of the journey, not the end. We still have a lot of different events planned for you in the next couple of days. So tomorrow we'll have tech enablement training by Microsoft, as well as a tech enablement training by Google as well. So if you guys are wondering how do you really build a prototype, here's the kind of like the platform for you to learn different technical skills for you to turn your ideas into reality. So for some of you who got shortlisted for the Hack Asia as a shortlisted applicants, there's actually one more event planned for you right after this webinar ends. So starting around 5 minutes from now, you guys will actually be joining a challenge statement introduction where you have the chance to also meet your mentors and ask any questions that you might have. So in case you're wondering, oh, where should I go? Check out for one email sent through the Agorize platform, where there's a separate Zoom link where you can dial in and interact with your mentors. So for all the mentors from different businesses joining us, do grab the chance to share your experience with the different mentees who are very passionate startup, student, and innovators. So we know that some of you guys might not be able to join the sessions upcoming next simply because you might be from another time zone or you might not be able to join us today. Don't be afraid. Through the platform, you'll have a chance to also interact with your mentors continuously through the chat function, and you'll be able to actually schedule a video call should you guys want to have a more in-depth conversation. So remember, we are here to empower you, and we hope that you will be able to learn from your mentors. And again, if you still feel confused about where you should be going, what I should be doing, don't worry. Email hack.asia@jardines.com or drop your questions at the live stream chat. Our team will still continue to respond to you in the next couple of minutes or so. So here comes a little bit of the introductions about like basically how we are grouping some of the discussions in order to foster collaborations and synergies between different people. So we'll have 5 different kind of key themes as kind of covered in today's breakout. So one of them is automotive sustainability. Second is around decarbonization and waste management. Thirdly is about property and energy efficiency. And last but not least, there's social inclusion, which is the 4th one, and renewable energy for the 5th one. So do check out your email to find the right room that you should be going into. So for all of you guys who have submitted your applications but might not be selected, it's just because we don't have time this time to actually meet all of you. We'll love all of you to continue to stay in touch with us, and we hope that there will be more collaborations between big companies, students, innovators, and startups so that we can innovate the sustainable future together. So with this, I'll conclude today's session and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you.